I didn't expect the sentence that would follow me for months to arrive the way it did, half-heard, not even meant for me. It came through a thin office door, her voice low and rushed, saying something I shouldn't have caught, something that landed wrong in my chest and stayed there. Pretend I'm her. I didn't know who her was yet. I only knew the voice. That was the morning I met Mara. I was 26 and filling in a few weeks at a neighborhood repair shop that fixed everything people didn't want to replace. Old radios, lamps with stubborn wiring, espresso machines that hissed like they were offended. The place smelled like dust and hot metal, and the radio was always tuned to a station that played songs you couldn't sing along to unless you'd lived a while. She came in just before lunch, tapping on the glass door twice before opening it, like she was asking permission. Tall, composed, dark hair pulled back in a way that looked effortless but probably wasn't. She wore a linen jacket even though it was warm, sleeves pushed up, watch too expensive for the room. She scanned the shop with a practiced calm, then smiled when she saw me. "Is this where broken things come to be forgiven?" she asked. I laughed too fast. "We try. Sometimes they fight back." She set an old tape recorder on the counter. Her fingers lingered on it, thumb brushing a scratch on the plastic. "It belonged to my sister," she said. Then, catching herself, "Well, my friend's sister. Long story." That was the first pause, the kind that feels like a small test. I didn't ask. I just nodded and asked what it was doing wrong. "Chewing memories," she said. I press play, and it makes this sound like it's embarrassed. I took the recorder, our hands brushing. Not sparks, not fireworks, just a quiet awareness, like noticing the room had gone still. She noticed it too. Her smile faltered, then steadied. While I worked, she stayed. Leaned against the counter, asked about the tools, the old photos on the wall. I talked more than I meant to, about my dad teaching me how to solder, about how I liked fixing things because they didn't argue. She listened in a way that made you finish sentences you'd normally abandon. When I trailed off, she waited. No rush. No filling the space. At one point, she stepped closer to hear the machine when I tested it. The recorder whirred softly, then clicked. Her breath brushed my ear as she leaned in. "Is that normal?" she asked. "Sometimes," I said, aware of how close we were, how my shoulders had gone stiff. I moved a fraction away. She didn't. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, jaw tightening. "I should take this," she murmured, already turning toward the back office. The door didn't quite close. I heard her voice drop, familiar now, intimate without meaning to be. "No, I can't listen. Just pretend I'm her. For 5 minutes." The words hit me sideways. I stood there, screwdriver in hand, heart doing something inconvenient. When she came back out, she looked composed again, but her eyes searched my face like she was checking for damage. "Sorry," she said. "Family stuff." I handed her the recorder. "It'll play clean now." She smiled, softer this time. As she paid, her fingers brushed mine again, deliberate or not. I still don't know. At the door, she turned. "Amara," she said. "Thank you for not asking." After she left, the shop felt louder, emptier. I kept hearing the recorder click in my head. Kept thinking about that sentence, the way she said it like a compromise she'd made too many times. And later that night, when I couldn't sleep, it wasn't her voice I replayed. It was the moment she leaned in, close enough to trust me with what she didn't explain. She came back 3 days later, and I knew it was her before I looked up. Not by sound, by the way the room shifted. Like the air learned her shape. I was elbow deep in an old amplifier when her reflection appeared in the chrome faceplate. Same linen jacket. Different posture. Tighter. She stood there a second, watching me work, like she didn't want to interrupt something fragile. "I think it's broken again," she said lightly, holding up the tape recorder. I wiped my hands, took it from her. "Already." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes this time. Turns out forgiveness doesn't always stick. I opened the casing and gestured toward the stool by the counter. "Might take a while." She sat, crossing her ankles instead of her legs. Small thing. Noticed it anyway. Her hands folded and unfolded in her lap, fingers worrying at a loose thread near the cuff of her sleeve. She looked tired in a way sleep doesn't fix, like she'd been carrying something heavier than she let on. We worked side by side, mostly quiet. I explained what I was doing more than necessary. She nodded, asked questions that showed she was listening but not pushing. Every now and then she laughed, soft, quick, like she was checking whether it was allowed. At one point, I asked, "Did it belong to your friend's sister or—" She froze, just for a beat, then exhaled slowly. "My twin," she said. I don't know why I said it that way last time. I waited. The solder cooled. She moved away. Mara continued, eyes on the floor. "We don't talk much anymore. This thing has her voice on it. Old recordings. Messages she never meant me to keep." "That's not weird," I said. She glanced up. "It is when you listen to them alone." Another pause. The kind that stretches. Her phone buzzed again. She didn't look at it this time. Just flipped it face down on the counter like she was tired of being summoned. Her hand lingered there longer than necessary, thumb resting on the edge of the screen. "I shouldn't be here," she said quietly. I didn't ask why. I just nodded, like I understood more than I did. When the recorder finally clicked back to life, clean and steady, she leaned in without thinking. Close enough that I could see the faint crease between her brows, the silver threading through her hair she probably pretended wasn't there. Close enough that when the speaker crackled, her shoulder brushed mine. She didn't move away. The recording played, indistinct voices, laughter cut short. Mara closed her eyes, just for a second. Her hand lifted, hovered, then rested on the counter near mine. Not touching. Almost. "Thank you," she whispered. "Not for the repair. For something else." When she stood to leave, she hesitated. Looked at me like she was deciding whether to say something dangerous. Instead, she smiled, sad, small, and said, "You're very easy to be quiet with." After she left, I stayed where I was, staring at the place her hand had almost been. And I realized the problem wasn't that she shouldn't be here. It was that part of her already was, and I didn't want it to leave. The storm came in sideways, sudden and loud, rattling the front windows like it had a complaint. By the time I pulled the door shut and flipped the sign to closed, the street outside had emptied, rain turning the pavement into a blurred mirror. Mara was still there. She'd stayed late because the bus schedule had shifted. She showed me the alert on her phone, then didn't put it away. Just stood by the counter, jacket draped over a chair, hair loosening at the edges. The shop lights hummed softly, the radio low enough to feel like an accident. "I can walk you," I said, immediately aware of how that sounded. She shook her head. "I'll wait it out. If that's okay." "It's okay," I said too quickly. We didn't sit across from each other. We ended up on the same side of the work table, sorting through a box of old cassettes she'd brought without explanation. Labels faded, handwriting slanted and familiar. She touched each one like it might answer back. "I never throw things away," she said. "I tell myself it's practical. It's not." I smiled. "I fix things that don't want fixing. That's different." She glanced at me. "You're giving them another chance." Outside, thunder rolled, distant, not dramatic. Inside, the quiet thickened. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen this time. Didn't answer. It rang again. She sighed and stepped a few feet away, voice low but not careful enough. "No," I said, "I can't tonight." "Because I don't want to, that's why." "Please don't." She stopped, listening, jaw tightening. "I'm not her." She hung up and stood there, still, like she was waiting for something to settle. "I'm sorry," she said without turning. "I didn't mean to bring that in here." "You didn't," I said. Then, after a beat, "Do you want some tea?" She nodded, grateful in a way that felt heavier than thanks. We stood close by the kettle, shoulders nearly touching. She rubbed her hands together absent-mindedly, then laughed softly. "I forgot how small this place is. Usually it's just me and the dust," I said. She looked at me then. Really looked. "You don't disappear when it gets quiet," she said. "Most people do." Something in my chest shifted. I wanted to tell her that I noticed the way she braced before her phone rang, that I'd started listening for her steps outside, that I was careful because I didn't trust myself not to be more. Instead, I said, "You don't have to stay if you don't want to." "I know," she said. "That's the problem." The lights flickered once. The kettle clicked off. She reached past me for a mug, and for a second her hand rested against my wrist. Warm, steady. She didn't pull away. Neither did I. We stood there, breathing the same quiet, close enough that I could have leaned in, close enough that the choice felt loud. She withdrew her hand first. "Thank you," she said again, softer this time. I watched her wrap both hands around the mug like it was something she could hold on to. And I knew, whatever almost happened in that narrow space would keep happening, again and again, in the pause right before I let myself move. It happened on a morning that wasn't dramatic enough to deserve it. No storm, no music, just the shop half-lit, dust floating like it always did, the radio off because neither of us turned it on. Mara stood by the counter without taking off her jacket. That was how I knew something was wrong. "I shouldn't keep coming here," she said. Not angry, not apologetic, just tired. I didn't answer right away. I tightened a screw that didn't need tightening, then set the tool down carefully. "Okay," I said. "Do you want your recorder back?" She flinched, not at the words, but at the distance in them. "That's not what I meant." We stood there, facing each other across nothing. She looked older that morning. Not in years, just in the way someone looks when they've stopped pretending a thing is harmless. "This was supposed to be simple," she said. "You fix something. I say thank you." "We don't." She stopped, pressed her lips together. "We don't look at each other like this." I leaned back against the work table, folded my arms so my hands wouldn't give me away. "Like what?" She met my eyes. Didn't smile. Didn't soften it. "Like we're waiting." The word landed hard. "For what?" I asked, though I already knew. She exhaled through her nose, a quiet, humorless sound. "That's the problem. I don't know. And I should." Silence stretched. Not awkward. Heavy. The kind that asks things without permission. "I'm not confused about you," she said slowly. "I'm confused about myself when I'm here." My throat tightened. I wanted to say I felt it too, that I'd started rearranging my days around the chance she might walk in, that I noticed the absence of her like a missing sound. Instead, I said, "I don't expect anything from you." She looked down at her hands. They were steady. Too steady. "I think that's what scares me." She walked to the window, stared out at the street like it might offer an exit. "I have a life that makes sense," she continued. "People who know where I belong. And then I come here, and it's quiet, and I don't have to explain myself. And that makes me feel." She stopped. Swallowed. "Careful," I offered. She shook her head. "Exposed." I pushed off the table, took one step closer, then stopped myself. Left the space between us intact. "If this is too much," I said, "I can pull back." She turned then, eyes sharp with something like pain. "Don't," she said. "Don't make this about control. I'm already doing that enough." Another long pause. Her gaze searched my face like she was memorizing it for later. "I don't want to hurt anyone," she said. "And I don't trust myself not to." I nodded slow. "Honest." "Neither do I." She closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were wet but unbroken. "This can't keep being nothing," she whispered. "And it can't be something either." She picked up her jacket, hesitated, then looked at me one last time. "Promise me," she said softly, "that if this ruins something, it won't be you." I didn't answer, because the truth was already there, loud in the silence. She left before I could lie. She didn't come back for a while. Long enough that the shop forgot her shape. Long enough that I stopped listening for the door and started telling myself it was better this way. That whatever we were circling had chosen to dissolve on its own. Then one evening, near closing, the door opened without the familiar double knock. Mara stepped inside like she wasn't sure she was allowed. No jacket this time. Hair down. Tired in a way that felt honest instead of hidden. She didn't smile. She didn't apologize. She just stood there, hands loosely clasped, breathing like she'd climbed stairs too fast. "I'm not here to pretend anymore," she said. I nodded once. Didn't move toward her. Didn't ask what she meant. The space between us felt intentional now. Chosen, not accidental. "I tried to make it go back to normal," she continued. "I told myself this was just quiet. Just kindness. Just relief." She shook her head, a small, self-aware smile flickering and gone. "But I don't undo things well. I only learn what they are by missing them." I swallowed. "You don't owe me an explanation." "I know." She glanced around the shop, at the half-fixed things, the waiting. "That's why I'm giving you one anyway." We sat, not across from each other, but side by side on the worn bench near the back wall. Close enough to feel warmth. far enough not to rush it. The radio stayed off. Outside, the street hummed, ordinary and indifferent. I can't promise clean edges, she said quietly, or certainty, or that this won't be slow and inconvenient and complicated. I looked at our hands resting on our knees. Not touching. I don't need promises, I said. I just need us to stop pretending this is accidental. She exhaled, like something inside her finally unclenched. Okay, she said. Just that. We sat there a long time. Long enough for the light to shift. Long enough for the silence to soften instead of sharpen. At some point, without looking, she let her hand drift closer. Not asking, just present. I covered the back of her fingers with mine. Gentle. Still. She leaned her forehead against my shoulder, tentative, testing whether I'd pull away. I didn't. Her weight settled there like it had been waiting. No kiss. No rush. Just the quiet understanding that this wasn't a beginning or an ending. It was a decision to stop resisting what had already taken shape. I'm here, she murmured. Not as a promise. As a fact. I rested my cheek lightly against her hair. Me too. Outside, someone laughed. A car passed. The world kept going. Inside the shop, among the broken things and second chances, we stayed exactly where we were, close, imperfect, and no longer pretending we didn't know what that meant. I'm telling this now from a quieter place. Not because everything became easy or clean or resolved in the way stories like to pretend they do, but because enough time has passed that I can see the shape of it, what it was, what it wasn't, and what it changed. Mara and I didn't blow our lives up. We didn't disappear into something dramatic. What we did was smaller, harder, and somehow braver. We chose honesty over comfort. We chose slowness when it would have been easier to rush or retreat. The shop changed first. It stopped feeling like a waiting room. We'd sit there some evenings after closing, not always talking. Sometimes she'd read while I worked. Sometimes I'd just watch her exist in the quiet she'd once borrowed from me, and now claimed as her own. She laughed more. Softer, fuller. Still tired sometimes. Just less alone in it. I changed too, though it took me longer to notice. I stopped mistaking intensity for meaning. Stopped thinking love had to announce itself loudly to be real. I learned that restraint isn't the opposite of desire, it's often proof of it. That wanting someone and choosing them are different acts, separated by patience and fear she never asked me to pretend to be anyone else again. That sentence, the one that started everything, lost its power over time. Not because it didn't matter, but because it taught us something uncomfortable and true. People don't want replacements. They want relief. They want permission to rest inside someone else's attention without having to perform who they're supposed to be. What we built wasn't perfect. It bent under the weight of real life. There were days she pulled back. Days I questioned my place. Conversations that ended unfinished and nights that felt too quiet again. But the difference was this. We didn't confuse silence for absence anymore. Love, I learned, isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision not to let fear make every choice for you. Sometimes she still stands by the counter, hands folded, watching me work. Sometimes I catch her looking at me the way she did in the beginning, like she's surprised I'm still here. And sometimes I feel that same old pull, that first quiet electricity. Only now, I don't wonder what it means. It means we stayed. And that, it turns out, is the rare part. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?